Hello, hello. It is Maria. Hello, everyone. Hello. Goodness, I was supposed to be here at 5 Eastern, and I had a little bit of technical difficulties, but here we are. Gonna give a few minutes to let people get on, and then I'll get started. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, we're live. So my name is Maria. This is the series Lift Our Voices Up by Adoptees of South America. Megan and I host these features throughout the month, and we're so happy to feature the individuals in the community because we know that the conversations are so important. And so let's begin. This is our 23rd feature. I've got Joe here. I'm going to get him on, and then we will get started. Let me do this. You know how sometimes it does. Hold on. Sometimes it just doesn't want to. Okay. I've invited him. So he will be. Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. Oh my goodness. I had some technical difficulties. Thanks so much for your patience. You know how it goes. Yes, so glad that you're here. I'm so happy to talk about what we're going to talk about. My name is Maria. This is Joe. I'm going to hand it over and let's begin.
Great. Well, I can just start by giving a little bit of a brief background about my adoption.
Yeah.
I'm originally from Guatemala. I actually was adopted when I was 3 months old. So I grew up here in Maryland, where I'm at now. I am a transracial adoptee, so I was raised by a white family. And, I didn't really have any connection to my birth family since then. So that's kind of part of my journey this year, searching for birth family, but also, taking my first trip back to Guatemala this year. So there's a lot of things that go along with that. And adoption definitely affected lots of different parts of my life, as well as some of my other identities. So that's like my little short background. But I can go into any other things that people want to hear about.
Yeah. So you were adopted, you said 3 months, right?
Yep.
And had you haven't been back since then, or no, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It just wasn't something that I think we talked about a lot. It's not something that I think my parents really wanted to talk about. And so, I was never given the opportunity to go back. I know that some adoptees were, and, others like me have not been back.
Yeah, I noticed that with my family too. Like it wasn't discussed, and so now that we're in, I'm in reunion. It's still like how do we talk about this? How do I talk about my parents that are my biological parents? How do I feel comfortable and feel validated when we weren't talking about it? So yeah, that's huge. Are you feeling like you're wanting to be open with your family about that, or kind of keep it to yourself a little bit, or how you feel about that?
It's a little bit of an interesting journey, if I'm being honest. There are parts of this that I feel like I do want to share with my, adoptive parents. But they, if I'm being honest, I think that they struggle because they feel like by me doing this search and going back, there's they didn't raise me right or something like that. And it's a hard conversation to have because I think that it can be both. It can be like this, you did a good job raising me, but there were things that were missing that I am ready to find out more information about. And so that can be a difficult conversation to navigate. And I haven't really opened up about why I am ready to go back with my adoptive parents. And who knows? I mean, I'm going to see them tomorrow night. My dad's birthday is coming up, so maybe tomorrow night is the night to talk about it. Who knows?
Right? Yeah, you just never know. Just Just see how you're feeling and know that any feelings that do come up, that they're valid. I remember when I first, so I had thought about, I had thought about my mom. I didn't really think about my dad, my biological father growing up, but I thought about my mom. And my original like search was for health. Like literally, like I'd like to like learn my history. I had just given birth, and that was like, when I was in my early 20s. And then it went to, no, I want to find them. And I felt I was kind of torn, like how it had shifted, and that it was like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Like so many feelings, like, is it okay? Like, is it okay to feel like I want to know them and I want them to know that I'm okay? Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I wanna like one say I think when I was growing up, I always thought about my birth mom, and you know, I don't know if it was like the narrative there about like my birth father maybe not being a good person, but like I know when I was in situations where like I wasn't agreeing with my parents, or maybe we got into like a little bit of a like thing, I would always think about my birth mom and kind of like where she's at and what she's up to, and I would like try to picture her face and all of this other stuff that it seems so profound now looking back at like that was what was going on. But I think my reasoning is very similar. It's like I want to know, like, are they doing okay, and kind of
Mhm.
open my life up a little bit in a way that I haven't before.
Yeah, yeah. It's a journey. I have two questions. Uh, when you were thinking of your birth mom, did you ever like it? It's so strange, but I knew my birth mother was in Ecuador, but I still was always trying to like find people who kind of looked like me in society. And I think about it now, and I'm like, that is so interesting. Like, I mean, I guess I could have family here in the U.S., um, but I had only known that they were there, But for some reason, I was still like, I wonder if, not necessarily that could be my mom, but like, I wonder if that's like a relative, or I wonder if we're like connected in some way, But like you said, it seemed so profound, but it should be normal that we are thinking these things. Um, Another thought that I had was they're going to miss out. My mom's going to miss out on me graduating and me having a baby or finding love or walking down the aisle and just those things like that. I was just like, man, like they're just completely removed from those milestones that are in our lives. And, I don't know how I feel about that. Like that's a hard thing to kind of say, it is what it is. And I guess I did say, it is what it is. Um, but yeah, did you spend a lot of years before you decided I want to start searching or,
Yeah, it's been something that was always on my mind. Similarly, like when I was younger, I think that I was always looking for people that look like me, and people that, I just felt very out of place. I grew up in a community that is very white, and it's actually, like right now, I'm doing some work with one of the organizations that I'm on the board of, like about racism in that community, and like it's very toxic. And looking back, I don't think I knew that when I was younger. So there also weren't many people that looked like me. And I remember that for me, and this is going to sound so weird and random if I'm being honest, but like I remember looking at the um, Native woman on like the Land O'Lakes package. I don't know if you remember when that was the logo. They changed it finally, and I thought like I feel some connection to this person, and like I think there's nobody like that in my community, and there was no one like that like around me, and that sounds like super weird and super profound, but like that was where my head went. And I think that it, it was just one of those things that now that I've been able to like connect with other adoptees and like people who have a similar experience as me, it's been like such a change in like the way that I view society. Like this week we announced a return trip to Guatemala, and I've been working with a bunch of Guatemalan adoptees, and all of those Zoom calls, I just look at the screen and I was like, here's people that look like me, and here's people, like I just never ever have been around that in my life. And so it's been super cool to like find that community and really like through the pandemic and through, like kind of having to be alone, we all kind of found each other, and that's amazing.
Yes, yes. Well, first of all, it's not crazy or silly with what you were talking about because I'm going to share with you. So I actually felt connected to Pocahontas,
Mhm.
and I just literally went like the connection to the indigenous person. And I didn't know that connection until you just said it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I would buy books, like I wanted to know about her life. Um, and yeah, that was my go-to person. But I think it's amazing that you found community, and especially with your getting ready to travel and do all of this stuff, because it can feel isolating. It can feel isolating, um, and to talk about it when it wasn't normalized growing up. Like how do we talk about it now, and like kind of like play catch up with little us that didn't get to talk about it. Like now we're talking about these things where we're like, we should have been able to talk about this. So I'm really, really, really happy for you in that um, retrospect. Um, so let's talk. Okay, so you found community, um, and yeah, it feels good to be able to look back and say they understand. Like they get it. They get me. They get, and also feel validated um, in our journeys. Um, let's go back a little bit when you're talking about the white community and identity, like how that was challenging for you growing up and stuff.
Yeah. Racial identity is really hard for me, and I'll start by saying that I still struggle with it to this day. It's not something that I think. Well, I don't want to say I'll never get there. I just think that like it's a work in progress, I guess is the best way to put it. Um, but I guess from a very young age, I always knew that I was different. I stood out, like, and I would get comments like, well, where are you from? And just like the little comments that like I think people don't realize can be harmful when you look different. Um, I had people that said that I had, I'm not going to say the exact word, but like Asian eyes basically, like when I was very young. And people just didn't really know like where I was from. And I didn't really know anything about my culture, and I couldn't really talk about it. Um, and for me, it really wasn't until I got to high school that I realized that there were other people of color even. Like I can count on one hand how many people of color went to my school, in middle school and elementary school. And for high school, I was in a magnet program, so I went kind of outside of where I would have typically gone, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of people of color, and like my friends at the time would say that like I really had like a crisis a little bit of like not knowing who I was. Like there were friends that were like, you tried to like fit in with like the white people, but it didn't really work. And then you tried to like fit in with the black people, and that didn't really work. And then you tried to fit in with like the Hispanic and Latino group, and like I feel like that was the best thing, but like I think inside I still kind of felt like an outsider in that group because I don't speak Spanish, and I know a little bit of it, but like not enough to like have a full on conversation. And like culturally, I grew up in an Irish household, and so like that is like if you want to talk about like church on the weekends or like just whatever like white culture is, I don't
Yeah.
at me, but like you know, it's just so like that was the first time that I knew other people of color, and since then it's really been this journey of just trying to be comfortable with myself. Um, and I will say like right before the pandemic, um, so this must have been like winter of 2020. I was on a work trip, um, and I met this person who was also, Latinx and from Mexico, and we just got to know each other pretty well. And like at the end of this conference, it was like a conference for work. We had like a conversation about identity, and he was like, "You can't let anybody else define your identity. Like, you are Latinx and you are enough, and like you have to believe that. And like hearing
Mhm.
somebody who like was Latinx and who like had that experience for me was kind of life changing. Like, this is somebody that like, we're not that close, right now, but like they've had such a big impact on my life because that was the first time I kind of heard that from somebody that looked like me. And that was wild. And I've just been on this kind of journey since then. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that, those are those are some good words, wise words, and I feel like it's personally for me. I don't. I wish it could just be like, all right, I feel it, and like you said, but it is going to be like a long journey. I'm 38, and so though that many years where I, or let's say 35 or 36, where I wasn't knowing how I wanted to show up. So there's a lot of undoing, there's a lot of unlearning, society standards, society beauty, like all of that. Like it's great. It's yeah. Sometimes I'm like, how do I do it all? We just have to kind of take it like one day at a time because it can get overwhelming. It can, you can't check off boxes. Like that just doesn't.
Also, there is no way you're 38. You are lying to me. You are lying.
Yeah, 38, yeah. Thank you. Get it from my mama. Um, but yeah, identity is like an everyday journey that surprises me. It surprises me.
See,
Elena, she's like, what?
where is the 30? You are lying.
Somebody said understanding cultural versus racial has been confusing but fruitful. Mm.
Yeah. Trying to.
Especially if it's talked about it at home. You know what I mean? Like, what are our white relatives going to like? Unless they're just like the wokest of the wokest woke, and they like studied it and like lived it. Not personally like lived it, but like how are we going to know until a light bulb or somebody says those words to you and then you go, okay, like I get it now. There's no way. So that's why the community, us talking about it, and we can all say, okay, like we're not crazy for, having these struggles. Um, mm,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's been something that it's really interesting. And I made a post about this recently, but kind of like this intersection of being transracial adoptees and like I find myself in my current role kind of leading some of our diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work. And like I feel like transracial adoptees specifically are kind of just like in a good place to lead that because like I think about how I grew up in like a white household where like like you're just taught not to talk about race. You're taught that like race is not something you talk about unless, and I will say unless it's like, and this is gonna sound bad, but like it's degrading someone else, like degrading a person of color. That is when it was talked about. And like I had to go through that process of saying like this view that I've had for my entire life is wrong. And then I had to challenge that, and I have to still challenge that sometimes. Like I find myself in like spaces with people of color, and like sometimes there will be that little like judgment that comes up, and it's like, no, that's wrong. And like, but you have to be aware of it, and getting to that point of like having to challenge that because you also like move through the world as a person of color. So like I know what it's like to get those microaggressions. I know what it's like to be followed around a store. Like I know what it's like um to just be told like just things that like you wouldn't tell another white person. And
Right.
I had to confront it. And so like when I go into these conversations and I like set the space, like I can say like I was raised in a white household. Like I know what it's like, but I didn't have the privilege to ignore it. Like I had to. So I don't know. That was just like a little ramble, but like thoughts on the topic of like it's just like I couldn't ignore it because of who I
Yeah.
am.
Right. Yeah, they could, and they didn't, and our parents didn't see us in our, in our with our color or with our culture because we weren't there. So it was easy for them to not say it. Yeah, for me, my memory of when race was talked about, like my core memory was when I was dating my now husband, and my mother, sat me down and was just saying, like, because they didn't care who I dated, but they wanted to know that for me, I needed to be aware that other people may not be as welcoming for me in any relationship that I was in. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was it. Like, they may not approve of it, but, or they may not be supportive of it. And that was it. Like, it wasn't like, you know, connected to identity, or it wasn't connected to my culture or any of that. It was just that moment where, it was like a necessary conversation, but it was limited, and it prevented me from then opening up to the microaggressions growing up with, well, what are you? Persian, Asian, like it was like 50 different things that I was, and I would always be like, no, no, and then if I did say anything, it led to more questions. So you're not this, no. And then sometimes I'd be like, my parents are white, I think, to kind of mess with them. And they'd be like, wait, but I thought you said you were mixed. And I was like, I am. And then they would have me on these questions, and I'd be like, man, why did I say anything? Because they want to keep asking, and I don't want to go down there because I don't know the answer to those questions. So yeah, that's
Very real. And I had like,
good.
I mean, it even came from like teachers sometimes. Like I had a teacher who he was very nice and he was good at art. He was an art teacher, but he was like, what are you? Like he was like, because your last name is Irish. And I was like, okay, calling it out. Like, and like at the time, I don't think I realized how like uncomfortable that had made me, because like here's somebody that I don't know who was just trying to like assume something about like who I am based on my name. And I think I did share like I'm adopted and my parents are white. Um, and yeah, it is super embarrassing in front of like a whole class of kids, and they're like, "Well, what are you?" Like it's,
Yes.
you know, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, like, are you noticing that, as you step into your identity and like reclaim it, like, are you noticing, like, like you were bringing up that story, are you remembering more things like as you navigate? Because, are you? Yeah.
And it's just because like it's getting that like awareness of like, oh, like that thing that somebody said was actually problematic, you know? But it does come down to like the awareness a little bit. Like I was so unaware, and I didn't really know. And like now looking back, it's like, yeah, that is probably, you know.
Yeah, like, that wasn't okay. And then, of course, to do it in front of the whole class, like, eesh. Goodness gracious. That's,
What are you? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they really do. So, have you ever taken a DNA test?
Yeah, so it's actually, I took it last January, so it's been about a year. Um, and that was a really big, that was like the first step, I think, into learning more about who I was. And it was a gift from a friend of mine. And I remember because she was biracial, and she was like, I never kind of knew the full history of like who I was and my family background. And she got it for me for Christmas, or maybe it was for my birthday, and was like, you don't have to take it now, but when you're ready, like, do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I did it, and I don't know what came over me to like just spit into the little tube and send it away. Um, but I did it, and I remember when I got the results, I just kind of was like, oh my god, like this is gonna tell me who I am. And um, and I called that friend like as soon as I got the little email saying that my results were ready, and we talked about it on the phone. And
Mhm.
I think that it was wild because it was the first time that I like, because 23andMe has a little map with all the colors on it, and it was like the first time where I was like, oh, these are all like parts of who I am. And like you just don't know. I mean, like in Guatemala there was a civil war at the time, and like, you know, there were women who were unfortunately like abused by soldiers, and babies were stolen, and like there was just a lot of turmoil, and so like I didn't know what to expect. And what I found from it was actually that my father was likely the like fully indigenous person in my from my two parents, um, which did have like this weird thing because like growing up I had always assumed it was my mom, um, and then getting the results, it showed that my mom had more European ancestry, because it like breaks down the like where
Yeah.
they're type of thing, and it kind of like flipped everything around. I was like, oh my god, like what? Um, but it was really really awesome to like just finally be able to say like this is who I am, and for me like 65% of my DNA is Indigenous American and probably Mayan. So it's kind of crazy to like to know that now.
Oh, yeah. No, I feel you, and thank you for sharing that. Yeah, those, I think non-adopted people, really, not all, but many non-adopted people really don't understand like the magnitude of being able to see the breakdown, being able to see, and it doesn't tell our complete history, it doesn't say like, blah, 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 blah. But it gives us a history that we didn't have. Um, and for me, I grew up and I was told that I was Black and Ecuadorian, and I didn't know which parent. And then in my young adult, I learned that it was my mother who was Black and my dad was the indigenous one. And then when I met her, then I learned that she's actually from Colombia and that she's Afro-Colombian. So there's like another part of the identity that it was just like not existent until I was able to kind of open that up. And so you were saying earlier, and this is going back to what you were saying earlier with the transracial adoptee, like there's just it's so layered compared to, I'm not trying to like, but it's so layered, our experiences and what we go through and like with the culture and all of that stuff, like, and growing up out of, I mean, like out of our countries, and yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I'm just checking the messages. Um, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that it's something that again like just a lot of people don't understand it, and I actually find that a lot of times it's people that are like biracial or mixed that understand our experience a little bit more on that level, um,
Right.
because there are so many like just nuances to it a little bit, and and but that is also why like when I meet other transracial adoptees, like that connection is just so deep, because I think that it's something that like I just know that y'all get it. Like I don't know what else to say besides y'all get it, you know. Yeah.
They do. Yeah, they do. The validation is real. It's like, okay. Did it take you a while to feel validated, or did you feel like, and not in any specific area of your journey, but did it take you a while, or was it kind of like, all right, what I'm feeling and what I've experienced is crazy.
I think that if I'm being honest, it was really recently that I kind of was like, oh, I'm not crazy. You know, like all of these feelings are real feelings, and I think some of it was having to sit with myself so much when the pandemic started. Like really just having to like be by myself and
Right.
sitting with all of the things that I didn't know how to sit with. Because I'm the type of person that like I like to keep myself busy because then I don't have to focus on myself. And I would much rather focus on someone else. Um, and I will say like something that I don't always share, but like I think that for adoptees it affects a lot of us is that like, I'm in recovery now. I'm in sobriety because
Mm.
I was using substances to escape a lot of how I was feeling. And that came to me early in the pandemic as well. And so kind of the culmination of all of that has really helped give me a lot of clarity about who I am, and then like validating that how I was feeling and like the things that I was going through, um, they're valid feelings, you know? Because like I think growing up, I always was told that like they weren't valid, and that like I was just like, you know, the line that sticks out in my mind is like, you're no different than anyone else, and like that's just not true.
Mhm.
Not true. And so it's been a wild journey, and the past like 2 years, I feel like I've done so much more like self discovery and self acceptance than like I think I ever have before. So that's been kind of wild.
Yeah, yeah. The pandemic definitely had us slow down and really reflect and like bring things to the surface. And it was like, all right, am I going to deal with this, or am I, not going to deal with this, or how am I going to deal with it? And so finding the community, it was like, okay, I have community to do this. Um, so yeah, no, I appreciate, I appreciate you sharing, and people in the comments were saying that they appreciate your bravery and sharing. They love your bravery.
Well,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah. Um, okay. So, you found the adoptee community. You found, identity through that. In what other ways have you been able to reclaim and find identity?
you. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of my identity is, it really is through finding community somehow. You know, like, and I've shared before, at least on my own page, like, you know, I'm part of the LGBTQ community. And for me, that journey was, it was similar but different in terms of like finding acceptance with it. Um, and you know, I'm still on that journey with this too, but like I think like when I think about what affects my life now, like my racial identity is definitely a bigger factor with just like where I am presently. But for like being a queer person growing up in like a religious household, I was just taught that it was a bad thing from like a very young age. And what I had to kind of do was start to kind of find my own way with it. Um and it was finding other queer people. And it's so weird because I remember I didn't actually come out until like the summer after high school. Um and I think that I thought that people knew the whole time, which I think some people did, some people maybe didn't. Um and when I came out, two other people in my friend group were like, well, if Joe's brave enough to come out, like I guess I need to come out too. And like it was just so weird that like again, we had just kind of like naturally found each other, and like it took one person being brave enough to share for like everyone else to come out. And again, it was just like this is that community that like somehow we found each other, and then we just kind of navigated that as like young out people who like maybe didn't have a support system elsewhere. Like the people that were open about it in high school were bullied, and even I was bullied, and I never confirmed it. Like I never said like yes, that is actually who I am, but people knew. I mean, like I basically was outed by a classmate on a bus on like a field trip, and my mom was a chaperone, and I was like, this is not how this needs to happen. How dare you? And like all of this, but like now I'm just so comfortable with that part of me, and like if you have a problem with it, like I can't do anything about that. But it's really taken that community, and it's the same with like um I find in like recovery spaces, they're majority white folks. And so finding those spaces for people of color, or finding those spaces for adoptees, like there's even an adoptees in recovery meeting, and like all of that, like it's all about finding the people that just really relate to you, and then you can have conversations like this and like conversations that like just make it easier to open up to people. And it's been like really amazing to do that because again, like I didn't have anybody to like look up to when I was younger, and I didn't have anyone to like say like I see you, like I see what you're going through, and I want to help. And that's like one of the reasons why I think that I get so involved with like social justicey type things, because like I don't want anyone to feel the way that I did, because it sent me down a dark path. and like now in like a lot of the roles that I have, I like can create change in some capacity, even if it's just with like a couple of people. Like I know that I'm having an impact, and that's been really great. But again, like that does play into the like I would rather help other people than myself type of narrative that I get sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I also find like that sometimes when we help other people, we help ourselves. And
Yep.
it's not, we're not like picking things apart that we need to focus on. And so when we're helping people, then it kind of, maybe it's slower, maybe, I don't know, but I feel like it does happen. Just maybe not as, maybe it's just differently because we are um, focusing on the community. But yeah, community work is amazing, making change, and it's inspiring um, for others to be able to say, okay, I can do it too.
Yeah.
So what kind of sorry, I'm trying to just read real quick. See. Um they said my white loved ones act like okay. Um so yeah, you found a lot of community.
Yeah. And it's so wild because it's funny, like I've been working with a therapist for a while too, so like some of this is
Mhm.
I take credit for all of this myself, but um, like I remember when I first started seeing this therapist, I was like, I don't really know that many people of color. I don't really know that many queer people of color. Like I don't really know that many adoptees. And like within like 2 years, I feel like I've just found not only queer people, not only people of color, not only adoptees, but like queer people of color who are also adoptees. And like that is like this thing of wow, like wow. I don't know what else to say. It's just like those are the people that like I just know that I can like anything. I know that we're just here for each other. And like
Mhm.
a lot of the people that are going to be kind of taking this return trip to Guatemala with me, like not all of them, but a lot of them are, queer adoptees of color. I mean, we're all adoptees of color, but like quite a few of them are, um, and that's like wild. It's like wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody said you are representing for so many queer adoptees of color. That's beautiful and inspiring. Yeah, what a healing. It's like a healing experience that you're going on a trip. How long how long are you staying, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, we're gonna go for 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
it's a long trip, but I feel like it's the right time.
Mhm.
And my friend Chris is the person that kind of masterminded the trip, and
Mhm.
and they went back by themselves originally, and talked about how hard it was to do that, and how it can be really hard to go back and not have support to process all of this. And so like shout out to them for this trip because like it was their idea and I'm just kind of along for the ride. I'm helping kind of develop sessions around race and gender and culture and all of this, but like um it's like it's going to be an intense trip. I don't think it's going to be like a it's not like a vacation. It's going to be like we're going to go, we're going to learn things, we're going to visit a lot of different areas of the country, and
Mhm.
but I'm excited about it. I'm excited and scared, I guess. Many emotions.
Yes, yes, and all valid. Yeah, I stayed 2 weeks in Ecuador, and I began before I left. I was like, "Is this too long? Is this too long?" I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, and then time went by so quickly, and I was like, "Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!" But yeah, just you're going with community, and you're gonna explore, and it's yeah. I'm really, really, really happy for you. Take a lot of pictures, even if you don't share them. Take a lot of pictures. I took a million photos. Because I didn't know when I would be back, like how soon or how quickly. But I took pictures of the flowers. I took pictures of the mountains, like everything. I was like, I'm just gonna take pictures of all of it because I hadn't been there before or back.
That's exactly. I mean, I was like, am I taking this trip really just to get some good pictures? Like, what is like it's for us like it's such like it's not like we can just go back when we want to. Like, there's a lot of planning um and I'm ready. I already talked to somebody else, and I was like, we're gonna be each other's photographers, and we're just gonna take all of the pictures that we need for each other.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Yes. And because, for me, like when I went there, I was taking photos, but there were times when I was just so in it that I didn't. And then my family that was there, the family, my spouse and my kids, they took pictures too when I had my moments where I wasn't, in the headspace to do so. So the fact that you have somebody that's like, yeah, we're going to do this together, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, Somebody said it feels like the government should be footing the bill. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we really, we are making an appeal now to honestly some adoptive parents too,
Yes.
because I think it is, I don't want to say it's their job, but like, I think that it's an ask that we can make. And the government, in Guatemala at least recently did make all of our papers available through their own system. So I actually that's how I'm doing my search. I sent off my papers
Mhm.
to find my family, and that's brand new. I mean, it just happened. It was thanks to a lot of different support from different groups, but I'll say with Guatemalan Roots was one of them, and it's really exciting to see that like that type of stuff is available because uh, it's great. I think that there might be ulterior motives, like yeah, we're gonna send all these people paperwork, so hopefully they come back and like spend money in our country. But like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah. You guys can, yeah, I mean the adoptees can still gain from having that information. That's theirs. That
yeah,
is yours. You know what I mean? That is for y'all. It belongs to you. Um, but yeah, when I was planning my trip, I was like, man, like I wish that I would have traveled at least once in my adolescence. Like, why didn't that take place? Like, I don't know, and I haven't had that conversation yet, but I do believe that it should have been made possible in some way, that that during a lifetime that it would be feasible financially, stress free for the adoptee to be able to go and spend time in their birth country. And that allows them, by having that exposure, allows you to say, maybe I want to return permanently, or maybe I want to try and find ways to stay connected, but maybe not live there. Um, I didn't know how I was going to feel when I went there. And now I'm planning, like my future goals is to, buy property, possibly, if that's a thing. It's just like a big, big dream. Um, but I don't know if I would have thought of that if I hadn't been able to step foot back in it. And so those little steps that the government could easily do to be supportive in the mess that they kind of created, I think would be beneficial and necessary for us.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like birthright fees. Give adoptees land back.
exactly. Oh, there you go. There you go. Shoot, something. Oh yeah, somebody said like birthright for adoptees. And that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like. That's like the first, like it is, I should be able to go back and I shouldn't have to stress about the financial aspect of it, about like I should have, yeah. Mm. And ethical tourism. Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I have a quick question real quick. This is regarding to time, since I was having difficulties. Do you remember what time we signed on?
I think it was like 5:45.
Okay. Okay.
That sound right? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's what I was thinking, and I was like, I want us to be able to have time for questions. But yes, somebody said, yeah, I was broke. Who was else? Yeah, that,
True.
yeah, I decided to go in Christmas, which Christmas anywhere is a mess, and the tickets were expensive, and I brought my two kids and my spouse and myself. And if I go again, I can't bring them every time with me. Like it's just not feasible. And that should not prevent me from them meeting their family. It was hard for me to like get past that. I was like, try and go enjoy yourself as much as you can, like while this like in the back.
Yeah, and that's why we're group fundraising for the trip. I mean, like the participants that are on it, we don't want them to have to worry about that. I mean, like, we are gonna ask that they help cover their flights.
Right.
In like the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of cost, and it is like this is something that like we shouldn't have to pay for. And so like, are we there where we can do things like this for free? No. Are we gonna try? Yeah, and we'll see.
Heck yeah. No, I love that. I love that once again, the community is rallying around that, and that would be something that I would definitely want to try and consider with adoptees of South America, because, um, yeah, we should be able to say, no, I don't want to travel there, or yeah, I want to travel there, and how can I make this happen? So, mm, lots of good words. Okay, we're gonna open up the floor. If anybody has any questions for Joe, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we will try and get there. We'll try and get through them.
We'll get there.
Are you traveling pretty soon?
It's in July, so it'll be, I guess, like the 10th is when I leave.
Okay.
And it'll be,
Summertime.
yeah. So there's time. I have to like do the things like passport and uh,
Mm.
all of that stuff.
Yes. Oh gosh. Yes. Passport. That all those things. You know what I mean? Like even that. Like might have my childhood passport, my infant, but I don't have any of that. And it's like knowing those things. Like we should be set up. We should be set up for success when we want to travel back to our birth countries.
Yes.
Okay. So somebody did ask a question. They said, "How did you find community and make it a deeper connection?"
That's a good question because it can be to find community. It's another thing to like really make that deep connection. And I will say that like it's not easy. Like I think that I just realized, like this year that like there are people that I do have that connection to now. That like I know I could go to them with everything, but for the community, like finding community, I think the biggest thing was just kind of like looking for it. It actually started with my boss actually at work had a friend who was adopted and who I think that she knew that I was struggling a little bit. And this friend connected me with a group called Next Generation Guatemala. And that was like the first step of just saying, like, I'm adopted and like I'm looking for support. And then through like that group, I found some other groups and some other adoptees that have similar interests to me and have similar like backgrounds. But it's really hard to build that deeper connection with somebody that like maybe you haven't met um,
Yes.
in person. And so like I find for me like having a pretty active social media account and sharing things and like all of that really helps because then like you can respond to somebody's story and say like that really relates or that really resonates or like whatever, and then like sometimes that'll spark a deeper conversation on things. um but it's like it's hard because like I also like I used to be somebody that I was like I don't want to be on social media, and like now I very much feel like I'm on social media all the time. But like having those type of things that like that way when you're like approaching someone you feel like maybe you know a little bit about them, and then you
Yeah.
can start like going off into those other conversations that like maybe you wouldn't have if you like hadn't interacted at all. And so like if there's somebody that like you resonate with something, like just respond and like see what happens. And like sometimes it'll happen a couple of times where it's a little bit awkward, but like you'll get there. Like there are
Yeah.
people that like I don't know. I don't know that I thought I was gonna be friends with them, and like there's my judgment, and now we're friends.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great advice. I like that. Somebody said, what is one thing that is your must while you're in Guatemala? And what have you always pictured doing while you're there?
Yeah. I mean, I think the must for me is probably going to be visiting Lake Atitlan, which I don't know if I pronounced that correct, whatever. But there's I always see pictures of it, and I know that we're planning on going to like a couple of communities around the big lake. But it's basically a lake at the top of a volcano, and
Mm.
so many pictures. And like I remember like when I was younger and I looked up like Guatemala, like that's where a lot of the pictures are taken. So I can't wait to like see it in person. I think that that'll be like something that's, you know, I don't, I just think that like that's something that like I've always seen. And I mean, doing while I'm there, like I think that I honestly don't think I ever thought I would go back until recently, which sounds crazy.
Mhm.
Like I don't know that I've necessarily pictured what I'm gonna do. I mean, like I think for me, I'm still in that like, oh, I'm actually going back. Like I bought my flights this week, and I was like, okay, like the flights are booked, and I didn't buy insurance protection, so like I'm going. There's no turning back now, and that feels wild. But you know, yeah, I'm just excited to go back and kind of explore with like a group of people who are in very similar situations than me. I mean, I actually, whether you believe it or not, get very socially anxious. And so, like, I've already been like, oh my God, like at the airport, I'm going to freak out, blah, blah, blah. And like, calm down. It's a long way away.
Yeah, but it's all let's normalize feeling that way. This is a big thing, you know, like this is a big thing. So, um, yeah, I had those same thoughts. I was over the ocean traveling to South America. I had never done that, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this really happening? And everybody else on the plane, you know, I don't know their stories, but they were just napping and chilling and reading books, and I'm over here like,
This is
I'm going to Ecuador. Yeah, like this is really happening. Like this is really happening. So yeah, you're gonna have those moments. Yeah, you're gonna have those moments. Um, let's see. Somebody said bring tissues. It's all good.
all the tissues.
Hmm. So many volcanoes. Yeah. Yeah. Same. Anxiety is my middle name too.
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. Um, somebody said July is Guates. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Wet season. Be prepared for rain and enjoy your trip. Can't
Yeah,
wait to see it.
we've been talking about that because we're planning some like potential hikes, and it might be very muddy and wet. So it's fine. I'm just gonna wear my poncho. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah. Where you live, is there a lot of rain? Does it rain like where you live a lot?
Yeah, I mean, we get like a lot of summer thunderstorms, and the spring can be like, yeah, but it's not like I don't want to say it's like I don't know what's a city that rains all the time, like Seattle. I don't know if that's good.
I was about to say that. I was like, that seems like, yeah, that seems like
Yeah,
it. I don't know.
we have a good mix, but it honestly like Maryland is very weird in the terms of like one minute it'll be fine, and the next minute it'll be pouring down rain, and then it'll be like raining, and it'll be sunny. Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, that's how it is here too. Somebody said, I didn't even step off the plane yet, and Home by Disco Biscuits came on. Oh my goodness.
It's like perfect timing.
I'm gonna have to check that song out.
Yeah.
hmm Lots of good luck. Yeah. Okay. Somebody said, is there a deep question which you'd like to ask a local Guatemalan who's grown up there for which you could get an answer for in the US and other adoptees?
Oh, that's a big question. Um, what is my answer to that question? Oh,
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that like, and this isn't, I don't want to say this is a question I would ask. I think it's just a question that like this made me think of a little bit is like I was always told when I was younger like how lucky I was to have been adopted. Um,
Mm.
and it was kind of used as a way to kind of control like me, if I'm being honest. And one of the things that I always don't like about that is this idea of like this comparative gratitude type thing. Because what if I did not, what if I wasn't adopted and I grew up in Guatemala with my birth mother, and I didn't know that like the US was somewhere that I could get to, or that like a life like what I have now would happen. And so like it's like, again, it's not a question I would ask, but it's like, are you fulfilled? Are you like happy?
Mm.
Because I always think about like this deep sense of like, if I were to live and grow up in Guatemala, like it's been told that like I wouldn't like my life, or like I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have now, which I wouldn't have the same opportunities, but that doesn't mean that my life would have been bad. Like
Mm.
the narrative is that like your life would have been bad, and like I don't think it would have been. Um, so I know that that's probably not where the question wanted to go, but like it's just what kind of came to my mind when I think about that.
Yeah, I think that was an amazing response. I saw a lot of mothers with little kids when I was there, and I would cry because I would just think that could have been my life. And yeah, that's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
Really good question. Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Thank
I
you for that.
just it's so funny just reflecting on like all of the aspects of adoption, and like one of the things that I think about too is like I know a lot of adoptees who have changed their names kind of back to
Mhm.
what their birth names were. And I've been thinking a lot about that, and kind of this idea of being true to your name. So it's interesting because like my name, when I was born, my birth name was Jose, which is basically Joe, just translated into Spanish.
Yeah.
And my sister actually kept her name. My sister's also adopted. She's also from Guatemala, and her name's Rosalina, and I think it's so beautiful.
Mm.
And I always am kind of like, man, like what is behind the name? Like why was I named that? And so like one of the things that I always think about is like, names don't mean anything if you don't have the background on like why you were named that. And so like one of the other things I think that if I can find my birth family, which I don't even know if that'll happen, is like asking about um, where my name came from, and like what it means. Because like a name kind of is whatever you want it to be, but like I want to know like what my birth parents, my birth family kind of like saw with my name. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. Mm. Whew.
The deep and
So,
profound thoughts that come to adoptees randomly.
right? Oh, I'm right there with you. I'm always just like, I had to do a project in high school about our names. And I remember going, well, I don't know. I don't know where my name came from. So my name's, Maria. And I think I wrote that I think that I was named after, because large part of Ecuador is, Catholic Christian. So I was like, probably from the Virgin Mary. And that's what I wrote. But everybody else was like, yeah, my mom like had a dream, or it was passed down, and I was just like, this is a weird project, and like nobody could help me like process like what I'm experiencing now, that I have to like dig up that trauma. Um, but yeah, we are constantly having to just kind of think about those things um, that are parts of our lives that are like complicated. Um, I hope you can find answers when you go, and I hope um, that yeah, you're beginning this journey, and it's a very very brave journey. Somebody's asking a question. Let's answer this one more question. How does it feel to have a sibling that is also adopted? Have you helped one another in reclaiming identity?
Mm. Oh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
My sister and I are very different people. So my sister is 5 years younger than me, so she actually turns 20 next month. Her birthday's on the 7th of March. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that she's the type of person that doesn't like to talk about things when she's going through them. And I'm very much the person that, like, I want to talk about it and work through it with somebody else. Um, and so because of that, we haven't really talked a lot about our adoption.
Mm.
Besides like some big things about like the household that we grew up in, which, like my parents are fairly conservative. I mean, my dad still loves Donald Trump. And so like, I don't know if that says anything about like the house that I grew up in, but, um, and so she has talked about some of the like race related stuff as it relates to adoption, but we haven't really been able to like help each other. And I don't want to share too much of her story, but she's, you know, um, not in a great place right now, and so it's really hard because I think that underneath all of that is like a struggle with her identity and who she is. But if she's not ready to talk about it or to ask for help, like there's not much that I can do, and so it's kind of sad because it like in some ways I do feel like I'm kind of losing my sibling a little bit. But like I also have hope that like she will get through it and maybe in
Yeah.
the future our relationship could look different. But we haven't, when I tell people that my sister's adopted, they're like, oh, like you must talk all the time. And like, we're not there right now. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and answering that question. This has been an amazing conversation. I wish we could talk for an ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
I appreciate you chatting with me. And for allowing us to amplify your voice and have the conversations that are necessary and normalizing them so that other people can feel validation and we can feel validation every time we speak on it as well. Um, this IG Live is going to be saved so it can be rewatched. If you have any last minute things that you'd like to say, Joe, you can. But thank you so much for joining with me today.
Yeah, no, I mean, the last couple of things, I want to thank, you all, um, Megan also for all of the work that you're doing, because I think that you're really bringing a lot of people together that need the support. And thank you for kind of sharing your space here. I mean, it's so healing to talk to other adoptees. So if there's anyone watching that doesn't follow me and you ever want to have a conversation, like please reach out. I'm happy to talk about more things, and because it helps me grow at the same time. So
Mhm.
I'm really glad that we were able to make this work.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And I hope you have the rest of your day. I hope you have a good rest of your day, excuse me.
Yes.
And we'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.